Oh, hey, I'm recording. Haha. All right, so for this week, because as you guys all know, we had the problem with Revel personally going down. Um, I changed the protocol so you have 2 weeks up to the due date to work on your stuff on Revel. Anyways, last week we pretty much covered campaigns, elections, and voting, and I wanted to give you guys time to kind of go through all of this and have a little more time uh, on your assignments and discussions. And so for this week, I want to kind of talk about the news media. And the news media, what your discussion points again are based upon um, what you think covering this. Right now, we live in a very unique period of time where we often see that the news media has gone back to a very um, partisan-based system. This is reminiscent of when the founding fathers first formed the country, and you had a lot of papers being created, media being created that either pushed, Adams or Washington or someone else and someone else, and there was a lot of partisan involved. And in fact, I forget the case, but at one point, I want to say that Hamilton was suing or being sued by Adams. I forget exactly, but there was one sitting president being sued by either a current or former president, and the sitting judge used to be a president. I forget how it worked out. I'll look at the case for you. But it was very partisan based in its politics, and we see that again right now. That's more of a journalism type of class that goes into that, but it's a lot of fun. But real quick to kind of cover this, the media is very important, and yes, I know it's very biased right now. We always hear everybody yelling, fake news, fake news, fake news. Um, it's fact. I mean, you see a lot of it, and it comes from all sides. I'm not picking on any particular one media group on this. They all tend to do it, and they all tend to play party politics in it, as well as they have to meet the needs of their sponsors, and often they have a political agenda or ownership in that, and they want certain things looked at or certain things overlooked. So, anyways, the roots of the news media in the United States they can go all the way back to Benjamin Franklin during the colonial period. He started a small press company, and his thing was a lot of it was painting the what was going on with the colonies, how they thought, what was being infringed upon. I think you heard of the Do Good letters, um, um, and basically, he used a pseudonym to address the needs and what was going on in the colonies and what the grievances that the king was putting upon the colonists. And the thing is that recently the Supreme Court ruled. I forget the name of the case. It deals with a band called the Slants. That free speech, which is under the media is covered under free speech. That hate speech is not can't be infringed. So you have this situation with the media and the news that you can't infringe upon what's being pushed out into the public. If it's news, it's news. If it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't like it, it's still news. And so with that case, was basically arguing that a 70-year-old law covering patents was unconstitutional. And what it was is this band, Asian American band, were using the names called the Slants. They wanted to trademark it to take back the derogatory term for Asian people being called the Slants or slant-eyed people. So they were told, no, you can't because it violates this law and it's not going to happen. And they 8 years in court, and they won. They won, arguing that what one person considers to be hate speech or derogatory, hurtful, may not be to another person. And the Supreme Court's response unanimously, this was 8 of the 9 Supreme Court justices, because the new one who just got on the bench wasn't there when it was argued, so he kept his vote out. So unanimously, and this is very split, 4 and 4, four very liberal, four very conservative, I think three very conservative. Anyways, Kennedy kind of flips. Anyways, they all voted unanimously that the law was unconstitutional, that it's not the job of the government to choose what is derogatory, what is hateful, what might hurt someone's feelings, and through the law, which means everything dealing with that type of subject back 70 years ago is now unconstitutional. The bigger ramification for that court case goes into that when media puts out, or news groups, it's a very broad term, puts out something that highlights one candidate and downplays another candidate negatively, you can't stop it. So the root of news media, I often say in the United States, is based upon free speech. We choose as Americans often to get our biased news. We just do. We fall into a line and we do that. That's why with Fox News or even MSNBC News, when they do their polls, they're never going to poll the opposite side of the people who don't listen to them. They want to poll that side of it. Politics, again, that kind of covers politics. They are very biased, and when it comes to covering politics, they're right there now. I remember back before this was a big thing. Nowadays, especially with CNN, after the first Gulf War, made it very, very profitable to be a 24-hour news group. If they're doing something, they're right there, and they're trying to get that sound bite, trying to get that 30-second, 10-second sound bite. And so, politics in media has really changed a lot. With the Bush and Gore election, that was actually where the red and blue first occurred, in basically splitting the country along two colors. That started actually, it was either CNN or Fox News started it using the red and blue, and that became the standard back, 2016, 17 years ago. Yeah, wow. That became kind of the standard, and so politics has played a lot in the media and back and forth. Now you have literally on the spot. What is, especially with the election? What is, what is Missouri doing, right? And they go by the moment. It's almost like a car race or a football game. They're like, okay, Sanders is up to bat, and Hillary Clinton, she's on first, and you've got Trump, he's pitching, right? So you have all these different movements, and they're wanting to know how they're all doing at the moment. You've got George Bush back, a long time ago. Bush is up to bat, and Gore is the pitcher, right? It's on that moment. It's become very data and immediacy at the moment when it comes to politics. How the media influences public confidence. I mean, heavily. You get on all sides again. You get some half truths or some spun stories, and often that is designed to bring in the confidence of the people to believe that story. They both do it, and it's obvious. It's an obvious thing occurring. It's up to you as a voter and the public to know right from wrong, or truth from not truth, or how it's being spun. I always say that if you're going to follow the news, follow many different types of channels of news. Go overseas, Al Jazeera, so forth, and get their news, because to see what their perspective is. Sometimes you won't get the stories. You can go back to the Egyptian spring revolution off the square. If you get time, there's actually a movie called The Square. It's on YouTube. It's great. It's a great documentary, and it covers that revolution, the peaceful part of it, through 2 or 3 years. And the interesting thing was that the Western media rarely covered anything on it. They couldn't even they begged to get them to come and report on it, and they weren't. So the media has a strong way of filtering what they think we should get, as well as highlighting information they think we should receive. So it's can be very narrow. Your market coming through, say with a particular news entity. And again, they all do it. I'm not picking on one. And the others can be very, very broad. If you look at public broadcasting, well, of course, that's paid by the government. They may have a very, very unique spin that the government wants to portray. Voice of America, VOA, they're a international news outlet. The U.S. government pays and sponsors, and that's like the Voice of America overseas. And again, a lot of that is very much biased towards current administration, which can change every 4 years, 8 years, or so on. So media has a lot of play when it comes into news and vice versa. A long time ago, media and news were separate, and now they're pretty much kind of come together. They're very joined. Again, this goes back 200 years ago when we were doing partisan politics. There are rules for governing media, but the biggest thing is that there is no such thing as a press pass. Companies do issue press passes, but the government can't say, well, we're only going to give this organization and this organization a press pass, because then they're choosing who and who cannot have freedom of speech to write and to produce news as they see it, right? There are a lot of current trends in reform, but again, the opposition of that is going to be who's choosing subjectively to decide what reform should occur and who we're going to limit. You have the group InfoWars, Alex Jones. Don't laugh. I've watched him a few times because I like to kind of see different sides of politics. The big thing is he screams out CNN and Fox, they're all fake news. He's the real news. His group's the real news. And then you have CNN and Fox, other groups saying that he's fake news, or Breibert's fake news. So a lot of that plays into the idea of reform and how do you reform it. So my question for you this week on the discussion is going to be is, how do you think the news and media have changed, and do we need reform? And if we need reform, the question I put to you is, who's going to provide that reform? Because remember, the Supreme Court's ruled recently with that new case dealing with the band called the Slants, that hate speech is not a law. A law cannot remove hate speech or define what hate speech is. Therefore, the media, news, would be limited in what they decide. Back that up. An organization that wants to limit news or news outlets or what is defined as news would be limited subjectively, because anything that they choose to limit is subjective, just like freedom of speech or hate speech. So consider that when you're talking about this. So that's your writing points for the week. I'd like you to do some research. Go on to YouTube, see if you can watch the movie called The Stand, or The Square. The Square, yeah. It's in Arabic, so there are subtitles with some English in it. And if you can, if it costs you money, don't watch it. I'm not asking you to spend money to watch the video. It's a great documentary, but it does cost money. I think it does. So keep that in mind. If it does cost, don't watch it. But The Square is a really cool video if you decide to. And then also look up the case on the Slants. It does deal with trademark issues, but because it's dealing with freedom of speech, it affects everything under the First Amendment, which includes news and media. All right? Have a great week. And next week we'll start over on next week we're going to go over and cover interest groups, which will be due on the 23rd. This, of course, is called Part 2, you should say, of campaigns, elections, and voting. And, of course, Chapter 13 deals with the news media. If you've already written about it, that's perfectly fine. I would just like you to think about this. Think about what the role the news media has, and should we truly curtail or reform it, filter it? Is that really good for a country that's supposed to be, an open republic where everyone's voice counts, whether or not it hurts someone else's feelings? And that's pretty much how the Supreme Court's ruled recently. Have a great week. Look forward to your comments. And again, if you'd like, you can post videos on the discussion group too.